This episode is brought to you by Sorare. Stay tuned for more information on them later in the episode. What's up, everybody? I'm Scott Melker, and this is the Wolf of Wall Street's podcast, where twice a week I talk to your favorite personalities from the worlds of Bitcoin, finance, music, art, sports, politics, basically anyone with a good story to tell. And I've got a guest today who has a good story to tell. He's seemingly accomplished it all at a very, very young age, seen everything and done everything. He's an avid tweeter, entrepreneur. He kind of runs Twitch, apparently. He's sold a few companies. The guy's been very, very busy. But most importantly for us, he recently did a deep dive into crypto. He basically cleared his schedule, apparently, for 2 weeks and focused solely on crypto. And I want to hear all about that, why he did it, and what he discovered. Shaan Puri, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I should correct one thing in the intro. I'm not at Twitch anymore. I quit a little while ago, but the rest, I'll take it.
Peace out, Twitch. No more Twitch. So anyways, as I mentioned, you did that deep dive into crypto. I want to talk about why you decided to do that first.
Yeah. So I should say, like, I like probably most people on this podcast have been into crypto for a while, and a while means a different thing to a lot of people. For me, it was like, I don't know, 2013, 2014, started hearing about it. Initially, like most people, brushed it off, and then started getting into it. What I did recently was I took what Bill Gates calls his Think Week. So I had read this a while back that Bill Gates once a year will take a week, and he basically retreats to a cabin, takes a bunch of books on any topic that he's interested in, right? So some topic that he's encountered throughout the course of the year that he's itching to go deeper with, but he's so busy, he doesn't have time. He carves out this week as Think Week. He leaves his family, his friends. He goes to this cabin with a pile of books, and he just reads up on it. He just thinks about it, and he's learning a bunch of things, and he comes back, and it's like one of his favorite weeks out of the year. And so I had heard that, and naturally I was like, oh, I got to try that. That sounds amazing. And so I said, what would I do it with right now? And I said, well, there's been a lot of developments in the crypto world that I have been seeing from afar, or even like participating in very lightly, but I haven't dove in. And this is very much like DeFi, NFTs. I mean, it feels like every week there's like 5 new projects that are, quote unquote, game changers that are coming out. And I had only been like intellectually knowing it, but I'm not like, I've learned the hard way that just knowing something is very different than really knowing it. And the difference is, have you done it? Have you had any experiences with it? So I wanted to take a week to go in and actually play with all the new toys that exist in the crypto world. I wanted to use them and not just understand what they are from afar, but actually go in and participate in what people are calling Web3. So that's what I did. I took about a week and a half. I cleared my calendar, canceled all meetings, and for not just for me, for my team also. I have a couple of guys who work with me on all my different ventures. And I said, hey, cancel everything. We're going to do this together. It's like a hack week, but none of us are coders. So we said, it's a hack week, but for us, it's about, playing with all these different tools.
So that's the why and the what. So what did you learn? I mean, what was the end result of that? Are you feeling more passionate about crypto? Are you dismissive of some of it because it didn't work that well? What was your experience?
Yeah, the biggest takeaway was I need more ETH. I was like, there's been so much. My initial investments were very much in Bitcoin, and I think Bitcoin is great, and I think it's a great store of value. But the developer energy has obviously flocked to Ethereum, and that's where all the new stuff is getting built. And so even though I had a good position, I just thought I've never seen this much developer energy and this much sort of like economic activity flowing through a new network. This reminds me of like seeing early Facebook, seeing early Twitter. And at the time I was just a user. I wasn't an investor at that time, but now I'm an investor and a user. And so I can do both. And so my first takeaway was, okay, I need to go and I need to buy a lot more Ether. The second thing was there is a whole lot of interesting stuff. A lot of it is sort of what I'll call, it's like, like magic tricks. It's like work for work's sake in a way. It's like, look, we can do this and this and this and this. It's like, but wait, why would anybody want to do that? What's the use case and why is this different? So even when you go talk to experts, because when I announced I was doing this on Twitter, I have a pretty big Twitter following. So a lot of like pretty hardcore NFT or DeFi people reached out and they're like, oh, happy to help you get into this in any way you want. And when I talk to them, even the experts, it's a very fuzzy understanding a lot of people have. And so I'm a believer that I'm open-minded and I'm pretty optimistic, but I'm also, I'm a truth teller. And there are many things that are not quite figured out that are, yes, you can do it, but why would you do it? And how is this actually any better than what exists today? So that's like my kind of like very high level summary, but then I could tell you a couple of the interesting things we actually did during the week that I think maybe the audience will like. All right. So the first one was NFTs. So I wanted to do two things. I wanted to invest in some of the NFT projects, and I'll tell you why. And then the second thing is I made my own NFT. So let's talk about investing in the NFT projects. So again, here comes Truth Teller. A lot of people talk about NFTs like Bored Apes or CryptoPunks, and they talk about it in this flowery language, like the art just resonates with them, and the community.
Please.
The community is what's so important. I bought this ape. It's more than just a picture of a monkey. It's a community, and it's like, So here's what I did. I joined the communities. I went into the Discords and I hung out with the people that are in there, and here's the test. The test is if I took away the price appreciation, if it was just locked and whatever the price you bought in, that's what it'll be worth. So you're not going to lose any money, but you're not going to gain any money. Now, how much do you care about this community? How much do you care about this NFT project? And the reality was a lot of that community kind of hand wavy, flowery, feel good stuff, in my opinion, is at best, it's a nice to have. And at worst, it's just lying to yourself and others about why you're really interested in this thing. And a lot of people are really interested in this thing because they bought something that's appreciated like crazy and they want it to keep going up. And so they need to keep shouting the virtues of how great this is, how much of a classic this is, how much this is going to be worth, so that their price keeps going up. And so that's one thing I found, when I went in, and I was hoping that that's not the case, but that's what I felt was the case with some of the more popular NFT profile picture projects. And then on the other side, I went to, and I should say, it's not that there's no value in the community. It's just disproportionate. It's 90% of what they talk about, and it's 10% of what actually matters, or, some ratio like that.
Sure. I hate to interrupt you, but that also works to the downside.
Yes.
I found in crypto, which is interesting because I hear you describe that, but I've described many times how certainly from, 2017, 2018 altcoins that went down 90, 95%, people also became passionate community members about those losses because they were stuck in the coins and basically wanted to justify sticking around. So it's a really interesting sort of bipolarity there.
Yeah, and there's like the Lindy effect or whatever, which is people are probably familiar with it, but it's
sure.
For however long something's been around, that's sort of like if it's been around for 10 years, it's likely to be around for another 10 years. It's sort of the symmetry in that sense. There's sort of the same thing with these run-ups and prices. The faster the run-up, the faster the rundown can be, and so your sort of your expectation on how fast. If a network effect can be spun up very quickly, it can be spun down quite viciously as well. And that's something people don't talk about. They talk about network effects like they're this everlasting, undefeated, thing. And it's true. Network effects are very strong. But if they ever do start to unwind, they unwind viciously. And you can go look at Dig and see, the popularity of Dig on the run up versus the run down. There's been many social networks that have MySpace that have had tremendous network effects as they're building up. But, as they unwind, it's sort of this it's like being on the wrong side of a tetherball game. And that tetherball is just the momentum is just swinging against you all of a sudden. And there's really no way to stop it.
It's a great analogy. That works with brands as well. Actually, in my early marketing days, we worked with New Balance. And they all of a sudden became massively popular overnight because a bunch of hipsters in New York City started wearing New Balance. Right. And then everybody started buying them, but they didn't know how to capitalize that. And then when they stopped being cool, they had produced all these shoes and had scaled up to that level and had a real problem and scaling back down to their normal demand.
Right. Exactly. And so I think, their network effects are definitely, an investor's best friend, but it is worth understanding that they are not this, they're not father time. They're not undefeated. So, right. So the other thing I would bring up is minting an NFT project. So I said, I wanted to create an NFT and I thought through, okay, we did a kind of a 2-hour brainstorm. What could we do an NFT about? It's like Today, a lot of NFTs are sort of pretty pictures, of animals. So, pick your favorite rhyming animal, whether it's like a pudgy penguin, a lazy lion, right? Like you figure out some random animal and then you generate a bunch of variations and then you tell everybody that this is a great community and this thing's going to run up. And, I even thought about, I was like, with my size of audience and kind of like, if I got this in the hands of a few friends, like you could actually like pump one of these things and,
Sure.
you could basically drive it to popularity just through that. But obviously that's not something I wanted to do. And I thought, okay, well, what's an NFT I would actually want to stand behind? And so I came up with a different idea, and I actually had a pretty interesting experiment. So I created an NFT called 5 Minutes of Fame. And what this was I took one of the assets I own, which is I have a podcast called My First Million. It's a podcast that gets maybe 1 million downloads in a month, just shade under 1 million downloads in a month right now. And so it's a pretty popular podcast, right? That's about 10 million in a year. And so I thought, okay, what'd be cool? We get a lot, and I should say, the other thing is me and my co-founder, Sam, or the co-host of the podcast, Sam, we both are entrepreneurs first, podcasters kind of second. We built and sold our own companies. So we weren't really looking at the podcast as this moneymaker. We ended up actually selling the podcast to HubSpot when his company got acquired by HubSpot. And so there's the long story, there's a long way of saying there's no way to advertise on the pod anymore. So you can't buy ad slots. So I thought, oh, this would be interesting. We still get hit up by brands trying to advertise or guests trying to pitch themselves because they want to get on and, talk about their project or whatever and get a bunch of people to hear about it. So I thought, oh, what if I actually sold time as an NFT? And so I created 5 Minutes of Fame. What this entitled the holder to was 5 minutes of airtime on the podcast now or in the future. You could just hold it and let the podcast is growing 20% month over month. So you could just like hold this a year and it'll be worth more than it is today. You could buy it and you could flip it. You could sell it to another brand that you think might, if you were in tune with this NFT sale and others aren't, you could buy this, you could rent it out or sell it in fragments to other people. Or you could just cash it in right away. You could send it to our wallet, which burns it. And you could say, I'd like my 5 minutes of airtime, please. You can come on, you could talk about whatever the heck you want. So you could talk about, you could just brainstorm, shoot the shit with us. You could shout out your project. You could say your company name 500 times. You could do whatever you wanted in your 5 minutes of airtime. And so that was the project that I kind of announced on Twitter. And I started the bidding at 0.25 ETH, which was, I think at the time, like $700, $800. And it ended up selling by the end. I said, this is going to go for the duration of my Think Week and my crypto week. And so, we'll see where the bidding ends. And it landed at 11.5 ETH. So about $35,000 roughly. Is what that sold for. And I don't even know who it was, right? It's permissionless. So anybody was able to buy it. I didn't need to approve them beforehand. And so I thought that was one of the more interesting experiments and I guess profitable parts of of Crypto Week.
So in your deep dive on NFTs, clearly you got a taste for sort of the FOMO aspect of it, the hype aspect of it, but also the real sort of use case on the back
some of the
end.
utility.
Right. So you saw both, but having done that, what do you think the future for NFTs really looks like? I mean, I don't know that you agree with me, but hearing what you said, I agree. Pudgy penguins and lazy lions and stuff, those are sort of the first iteration. They're fun, but they're going to largely disappear into the ether, so to speak. But, we obviously know the incredible power potentially of NFTs by eliminating every third party from our transactions, right? We did transfer some value from me to you without somebody being in the middle. So what do you think after doing that deep dive, that long-term utility is? Where are we going to see the major use cases for NFTs?
So I think, and by the way, this pudgy penguin, lazy lion, the sort of like the rhyming animals, the silly squirrels, I don't know what else there is. This isn't the first, right? There was crypto kitties, and they kind of had this run up, during their time. So I would say, here's how, if you're asking me, here's how I think this plays out, sort of like one man's opinion. I wouldn't pretend to say this, like my confidence level would be low that I'm fully correct, but I think I'm directionally correct in this, which is a few of these NFT art projects will work and they will stick around and drive value. Hard to know which ones. So is it going to be CryptoPunks? Is it going to be Bored Apes? And I think there's likely to be they're likely to sort of have in value and then stay there for a long time. So I don't think they're all going to go to zero. I think the blue chip ones are going to have a pretty severe dip. and then plateau before an eventual run up, many years down the road. So that's how I predict those play out. The second prediction I would have is that you're going to see NFTs take off in a bigger way where there is more, a little more utility. And why do I believe that? Well, gaming, I think, is where you got to look for where NFTs are the next hotspot for NFTs. So why is that? Games historically already have in-game items as like a core component of what they do. And what we're seeing right now with games like Axie Infinity, where Axie, I think, has done over $1 billion in revenue within a very small period of time.
Two now, I think. It's crazy. Yeah.
$2 billion in revenue with a tiny player base. What you're seeing is that if you ever worked in games, there's this revenue, there's a metric that everybody cares about, which is ARPU, which stands for average revenue per user or average revenue per paying user. Right? There's two metrics that you care about. Those are two of the core KPIs. And what's playing out, I think, is that when you turn in-game items from from something that is sort of like the scarcity is controlled by the developer and they can turn it on and off as much as they want. They can run a Black Friday sale or whatever. Scarcity, the lack of scarcity makes these in-game items worth less. And then the other thing is that you don't truly own them, meaning you can't buy them, sell them. You can't have the buy and flip part of the economy, because usually, like in a game like Fortnite, the money only goes one way. You pay the money, you get the Fortnite skin or the in-game item, but you can't sell that thing to the next person, and you can't have this thing appreciate in value and benefit from it. So there's no ownership involved in it. And so I think what we're seeing with Axie is that when you allow ownership by the players, when you allow them to play to earn and play to own, you are going to get a different behavior. You're going to get a much larger share of their wallet because they can make an economic investment decision for themselves. And it's, of course, it's not going to all be pretty. A lot of the stuff they're going to buy is going to go to zero, but that's sort of like, you could say that about any asset class at any given time.
The metaverse will be just like the real world. Great.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's, you got to say that so people don't think, it's all going to go up. But also, you don't need to say that to anybody who's smart, because they understand, yes, that's, of course, anywhere where there is up, there is also down. That doesn't mean it is not valuable. And so I guess like the next thing I see happening in the NFT world is that games are going to adopt NFTs in a big way.
Agreed.
And I'm an investor in a company now. My former co-founder, he just started this company that's basically Stripe for minting and minting NFTs. And game developers are all over it because they're saying, great, we want to be able to create NFTs in game. We want to be able to host a marketplace in our game where our customers, our users, can buy and sell their items. And we want to be able to take a transaction fee of every buy and sell of those items. And the other thing we want to be able to do is sell packs of these and have people open up a pack and get rare or common items inside. And we don't want to deal with any of the smart contract risk. And so you're going to see companies like my friend's company spin up that basically provide the picks and shovels, the tools for gaming companies to be able to implement this in their game without having to know about crypto. The gamer doesn't need to own crypto in order to be able to use it. And the game doesn't have to take on any smart contract risk. And so I think stuff like that is going to turbocharge the adoption of this thing. So I think in games, it's going to become the norm that the users don't just have the item in the game, they own the item in the game, and they're able to actually like benefit from the economic activity.
I think what you just described is certainly not inherent to NFTs, but is probably the largest challenge for crypto in general as for the potential of mainstream adoption, which is that mostly in the crypto space, the tools just aren't there yet for grandma to do this as easily as she does everything else in her life.
Forget about grandma. During crypto week, I could barely use it. I'm a tech investor. I'm a tech entrepreneur. And like, for example, have you ever played Axie, the game?
I have not actually played the game. No.
Right. And so this is what happens, right? There's a bunch of us, me and you, like people who are kind of like, we're business people. We're kind of like analyst, commentator type people on the internet. We got our own podcasts or newsletters or whatever. And we talk about how this big trend is happening, but it's like never actually used it, right? That's why I did the crypto week to begin with, because I was like, I think I should actually be a user. The second thing I discovered is when I tried to be a user, I was like, holy shit, I got to take my ETH. I got to bridge to this other fucking network. And then I got to go on that network and I got to download the Ronin wallet. What the hell is Ronin? Do I trust this? Am I going to lose all my money? Then I got to get this game. Then I got to learn the game and actually like level up in the game, which is already hard enough, right? To keep up with it. the latest games.
And it costs a lot of money, right?
I mean, it costs money, right?
You can't just start.
But what was remarkable is I have this other business. I have this e-commerce business, and part of the e-commerce business, to run it, I have some people overseas that are like kind of like customer support or do different functions. So we have this wonderful woman named Irish, who's our influencer outreach person. She reaches out to influencers and helps, like basically sends our product so that, you know, whatever
people get in the hands of influencers.
Cute people on Instagram post our shit. So I saw on her profile she was like selling an Axie. And I was like, wait, you play Axie? Like, you know, you are not like who I think of as like, you know, crypto nerd. And she's like, oh yeah, everybody here in the Philippines is playing. And I was like, what? And she goes, I go, how did you guys learn? This thing is so confusing. And she goes, where there's money to be made, people in the Philippines will learn. And she's like, we found out that we can make money on this, but we didn't have to put in a ton of money because I don't know if you know, but there's this whole like economy of, I can basically create a team, or I can basically gift an Axie to somebody and they do the work, and then we sort of split the revenue, almost like
the team sponsor. It's like running NASCAR, you know?
Right. Or like back in the day, like, you know, the kind of the darker side is like, you know, the feudal landlord who basically rents out land to a farmer and then takes 40% of the winnings, you know, the earnings from the crop. And that's what's happening. And so she was like, yeah, somebody gifted me an Axie and I play and I earn. And then I have a team I manage in the Philippines. She's got like a multi-level marketing scheme going where like they have earnings. So I thought that was pretty remarkable that, like, you know, the way that crypto spreads is not always what you see kind of in, you know, the Twitter bubble or the different places that we hang out. It is actually spreading to different audiences. And I asked her, I said, did you own any cryptocurrency before this? She goes, no. I go,
it's not about crypto to them.
She goes, it's not about crypto. She goes, it's about making money. And I found that I can make money. And she goes, everybody here understands games. So we know like what mobile gaming is, and mobile gaming is super popular. This is a mobile game where you can make money. You just combine two things I know that I already love. I love playing games. I love making money. You told me I can play games and make money. Boom. And so, now I think that gaming is going to not only be the use case for NFTs, I think it is going to be a major driver of how crypto gets adopted by a bunch of people who are not looking to speculate on financial assets.
Right. But it's interesting when you're talking about it, that adoption comes with not even having to know that it's crypto at all.
Exactly. And that's the best thing, right? Like the best technologies, you know, we're on a Zoom call. Like what's a Zoom call?
I don't know how Zoom works. Right. Of course.
Right. Like, do I know how WebRTC works? Do I know what's going on under the hood? No, I don't need to know. I shouldn't know the names of the protocols, right? That's where crypto needs to get to, is where, you know, we don't know the names of the protocols. There's not this super steep learning curve. And how is that going to happen? A lot of people think that happens from decreasing like friction. I think that's true. Like, making things easier to use, easier user interface. But I also think that's a bit of a cop-out. I think what it really happens is you need a Trojan horse. You need something like gaming. You need something like a social network, things that people really want to use because of the normal like human drivers. And it should just come with crypto installed. So they're like, oh, cool. I earned money for having this awesome photo on this social network, or I earned money for leveling up in this game. These coins are great. I can actually sell my character or my in-game items and actually I can have earnings from that. I think that's how this is going to work, you know, in the future.
So when it becomes easy enough for grandma and for guys like us to use it, do you think that we are looking at a Ready Player One type future, you know, where maybe my kids who are, you know, 6 and 2, their jobs are in the metaverse or in games, and they earn money as teenagers, and they never go the popular route that was so normal for, you know, people of our generations? Do you think that that's what we're looking at here moving forward? Do you love sports collectibles or fantasy sports as much as I do? Sorare is blending this together to create an entirely new gaming experience powered by its community. Sorare cards are officially licensed NFTs from over 160 clubs, including Real Madrid, Paris Saint-Germain, and Liverpool, and all built on Ethereum. You truly own your collectibles. They are productive gaming assets that will generate rewards if you're a good fantasy player like me. Join Sorare and connect with your favorite teams, live the game with passion, and earn weekly prizes. You can do all of this at thewolfofallstreets.link/Sorare.
So I hear this a bunch, and I never know what the hell people are talking about. Okay, so if I ask you, what is the metaverse? What does this mean? What is this dorky term, the metaverse? I think everybody's saying this word. I think everybody has a different picture in their head of what this means. Mine's very fuzzy. So help me out. So tell me what you think the metaverse is, and I'll tell you how I think about it.
Well, I don't see it as an all-encompassing other world. I see Axie Infinity itself as sort of a metaverse, and I see these individual projects sort of developing into full, metaverses or worlds of their own where somebody can go in, make a living, make money. But no, I don't see it as like an alternate universe to our existing planet at all, which I think is how a lot of people imagine it. I see it more as individual opportunities for people to sort of obsess or become engaged in that certain thing, and then potentially make money or a living within that ecosystem.
So I think two things. I think we're not there yet, and it's already here. Let me explain what that means. But back in the day, if you remember the early internet days, and you can go on YouTube and find these videos of people like on the news describing email or describing the internet. I have a whole playlist called OG Internet, and it's basically just like how misunderstood this was. And, I forgot, I think it's like, Bill Gates goes on David Letterman and he's like, so the internet, what is this thing? I'm going to go on my computer and he's like making a joke, and the whole thing was a joke. And at the time they called it cyberspace or the information superhighway. And that's to me,
information superhighway.
That's to me what the metaverse is. We're in when people used to call the internet cyberspace and the information superhighway. That tells me we're in that phase of things, because people call it the metaverse today. And I don't think once it actually arrives, it'll feel so normal. It won't be called anything. It'll just be the way we view, the internet today. It's just like a simple part of our daily life. Okay. So what does that mean? So a lot of people think that the Ready Player One analogy is what it's going to look like, meaning it's literally a virtual world. You maybe put on a VR headset or glasses or something, goggles or something like that. And you go into this fantasy world, and in the fantasy world, you have a character and all this stuff. And I actually think that is going to happen. There's going to be parts of that. I have a VR headset, again, because I like to try everything, and so I play with VR as well. And VR is actually, like, frankly amazing. Like, do you have an Oculus?
I've tried. I don't own one, but I tried the boxing and stuff, and now I intend to get one. It's very cool.
Dude, you got to get one. I'll send you one. It's amazing. It's basically like you think because it's not popular yet that it means it must suck. But the exact opposite is true. You go put on an Oculus, like I think it's called the Quest or the Go or whatever, like the one that doesn't have the cord. And you play the games and you use the freaking thing, and it's like mind-blowingly good. It's that good. Now, it's still uncomfortable. Like, you don't want to stay in there for hours and hours. Like, after an hour, you're like, dude, take this helmet off me. So there's still some problems with it, and it's kind of expensive and whatever. But when you do go in there and you do play a game or use one of the experiences, it's unbelievable. Like, there's a Poker Stars game everybody should go play, where you're sitting at a table with you and your friends, and you just talk out loud because it's got audio and video connected. You choose your characters, you see how you look. You can look like a cowboy or like a fat drunk guy or whatever. And then you can pick up a beer bottle on the thing. You could tip it over, you could drink it, you could throw it at the next guy. It's going to crash on their head. You literally pick up the number of chips you want to bet. You have to, like, accurately pick up from your stack the number of chips. You're not like pushing numbers in like a mouse. You're like grabbing your $25 chip and you throw it in, and the way you toss it, that's how it shows up to everybody. They see your hand flicking the chips into the middle of the table, and you can smoke a cigarette. And it's amazing. It's a kind of an amazing experience. Some developer at PokerStars went nuts on this thing and built this. But I guess my point is, there are experiences like that are super immersive, that are crazy. But then there's things like, to me, Instagram and TikTok are part of what you would call the metaverse, which is I go perform on this network. I make virtual friends. I have a bunch of friends on Twitter I've never met in real life, but they're people I like and respect and talk to and do deals with and share information with and share jokes with or whatever. So, we already have these kind of like virtual friends from across the world that you don't know their identity. We already, like, I make money online. I have an e-commerce store. I have a podcast. I have all these things that create digital content that gets downloaded instantaneously by, whatever, hundreds of thousands of people all around the world. They put little mini speakers in their ears called AirPods that are like, tiny little invisible headphones where they can talk or listen. There's all kinds of crazy things that are already happening. So to me, what is the metaverse? The metaverse is basically just a collection of things that run on the internet. And the new layer that's getting added to the game, right? The game already existed. We already, had the information there, right? That was like Web 1.0, the Google era, putting information on the web. Then there's the Facebook, Twitter era, which was communication. So it went from information to communication. Now we're all talking to each other. We're sharing, we're emailing, we're posting on social media. And now what's the third wave? The third wave to me was transaction. That was e-commerce. Well, even before value, I think there was one layer, which was Shopify, Uber, Airbnb. I'm paying other strangers on the internet for stuff that I'm getting either digital or physical stuff that gets delivered to my door. And now it's value. This is the last layer, right? So I think what is happening here? Well, I own digital assets. You own digital assets. I can transfer them to you. You can transfer them to me. I can sell them on an open marketplace. I can make a living either creating digital assets, buying them, or selling them. And so, yeah, I think I think we're already here. It's just, this is the next layer on the cake where that's getting more seamless and it's getting more robust. And it's like things before that had fake value, like social networks. We all go and do all this work in order to collect hearts and likes and retweets. Well, now we're going to collect value. We're actually going to collect currency for doing those things. Gaming, same way. We used to go to collect virtual points and levels and in-game items. And now we're going to have value where those characters and those items we have actually are assets that you own.
And Twitter just finally added a Bitcoin tip jar, right?
They added it, yeah, and I don't know if you saw, they had this NFT thing. Did you see the sneak preview?
Yeah, NFT authentication, so that people actually know it's your JPEG and not just a right-click save.
Yeah, because that's the big thing that's lacking today in the NFT world. How the hell do I brag about this, right? Like, what's the point of buying a Rolex or a piece of art that nobody can see? And so, to me, it's amazing anybody's doing this when there's no way to display this stuff. Sure. And I think that the hack, the workaround was people putting it as their profile picture. And so that was the hack to display, right? Because that's really valuable real estate. That's your badge you carry around the internet, is your profile picture. And, so I think that was the hack. But, people have these galleries, like these digital galleries, but the problem is no one's going to go browse them, right? They need to be built in front and center. It needs to be like a Rolex where I carry it around with me. I don't have to convince you to come check out my Rolex collection. You just notice that I'm wearing a Rolex while you meet me. And that's what needs to happen for these assets to really gain value, is I need to be able to display them naturally and effortlessly and as a byproduct of us interacting. Like when you click on my profile, you got to see the stuff I own. And that's my flex.
Anyway, it's all about flexing. I was just going to say it's all about flexing and clout. But what I found more interesting, everyone's talking about, obviously, the verified avatar that can prove that it's yours. But the collection tab is actually more interesting to me because there's so many projects that have been trying to build what you just described, which is an art gallery where you go off into the platform and you can have this experience viewing everyone's
that's a museum
collections.
Right?
But now you have the museum right on everyone's Twitter account, right? They literally just click right over to collection. There's all their NFTs. That's going to sort of make a lot of those ideas moot.
Right, exactly. I can go to a museum once a year. You can come see my wine cellar once a year, but you can always see the car I drive, the watch I wear, the shoes I wear, the bag I hold, and that's where these things become a lot more valuable and a lot more prevalent when the status symbol actually matters. And people, by the way, there's this tendency by smart people to roll their eyes about flexing and clout and social status. And I get it, because I used to kind of think that way too, right? It seems like a shallow, stupid thing to optimize for, or that who cares about that? But everybody does, right? Everybody does to their own extent, right? Whether if you're getting your hair cut, if you are, if you're choosing a certain brand of shirt or shoes or whatever, what car you drive, what app you use, what phone you hold, these are all status symbols in a way. And status actually provides a very valuable service into society. And the reason I learned this was sort of this idea of gossip. So gossip is one of these ideas that people also saw as like this negative thing, right? If I said this person gossips a lot or they're gossiping right now, it's sort of seen as like kind of like a low level, low value behavior. And so, but gossip actually served a really valuable function. That's why it survived in evolutionary terms. Why is that? Well, gossip basically is a way of transferring reputation. It might be kind of like a lossy way. It might be like a sort of error-prone way, but it's better than nothing, right? Because if my alternative was, there's 100,000 people in my world, there's 150 people in my world, whatever the number is, it is too hard for me to firsthand go gather information to assess this person's talent, their, are they high integrity or do they lie? Like for me to go and come up with my own opinion on every single person would be exhausting. And then I have to remember all of that. That's also exhausting. And so what is gossip? Gossip is my way of getting information about you without having to go gather it firsthand. It's a way of spreading information very quickly without us all having to go do the work. So gossip actually, although it is seen as a negative thing, and although if done in excess, it's going to be quite toxic for your mental state, it is actually a valuable part of society and a valuable part of any community. And it goes both ways. It could be gossip that this person is amazingly talented, that they're very honest, that they're very
Right.
hardworking.
Positive gossip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
If
positive
if
gossip.
it's true and positive, it's certainly it's
Yeah,
certainly a good
exactly. And
thing.
so it's a way of transferring reputation. And so similarly, status and status symbols and flexing is not just this like shallow, stupid behavior that only fools will do. Yes, when done in excess, when you make your life about status, yes, then you've gone into the toxic realm. But status is actually really useful, right? It's a way of for me to know, should I go, talk to the person and shake their hand, or should I stay away because they might be dangerous? They might be, an unsavory person. And so social status is a hack. It is a shortcut for us to understand quickly, why does the verified check mark matter? I just got verified. It matters for my ego. Yes, it felt good to get verified. Yes, it felt good in the moment, but it also serves a function for anybody who sees my tweets to know, oh, this might be a credible person, or maybe I should follow this person. They might have something valuable to share. Maybe they've done something or they've earned this valuable social badge that tells me that this person is legit. And so it is a shortcut so that everybody doesn't have to do all the firsthand investigative journalism about each person. And so I think that status shouldn't be written off as something that doesn't matter or has no value.
It's evolutionary, right? I mean, apes beat their chests, peacocks spread their wings. Human beings are animals, and
We
everybody
flex our
has a way to
NFTs.
show off to either attract a mate or to get ahead, right?
Exactly.
It's really no different when you think about it in those terms. So the first epiphany that you had when you did your deep dive was, I need a lot more ETH, right?
Yes.
And we all know that ETH is clunky and it has its problems, but I tend to agree with you. I'm a huge ETH bull and have been for a long time. But as I understand it, your first love or first entry into the crypto space, like most people, was Bitcoin. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. What part interests you? How I got
The
into
part
it?
where you, first, how you, I guess, heard about it, engaged with it in the first place. But second, when you famously, in, I believe, December of 2020, said, I'm putting 25% of my net worth on this thing.
Yeah. Okay. We'll start there. So, I had small positions for a while that, had appreciated a lot, but just in the way my life played out, when I sold my company, I had a lot more wealth than before that. So even if proportionately, I before I thought I had a good holding, now all of a sudden it was a very small fraction of my total net worth. So I said, okay, well, what am I going to do with this? I sold my company in 2019, and by December, I think it was November, maybe ish, 2020, um, I decided that I could live with the downside of owning this volatile thing that could go down, but I couldn't live with the regret of not investing in something I believed in this much. Like my conviction had only been growing for like 5 straight years. And so it's like, okay, from 2015 to 2020, I had just become increasingly bullish on this thing. And what started off as like a little bit of play money with this mentality. I had this mentality before when Bitcoin was like $400. And I used to tell everybody back when I had no Twitter followers or just my friends, 10K or bust. And they all thought I was crazy. I was like, I'm holding this till 10,000 or I'll let it go to zero. And then it hit 10,000 and I was like, okay, am I going to sell it off here? Well, no, I've only become more bullish in this thing, right? There was only one moment somewhere along the way, I think at 3,000, where I got spooked because my aunt, who's like, imagine just like an old Indian auntie who doesn't know the first thing about technology, was at a wedding telling other people how they should buy Ethereum in a bad Indian accent.
God.
And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, if my aunt even knows what Ethereum is, let alone is saying it's good, and her reason why it's good is because numbers go up, top. And so, I called top, and then I sold some at 3,000, and then it ran up to 18,000. And I was like, well, I guess that wasn't the top after all. And then it did blow off and it came back down. But, that was the only time I sold along the way. And I guess so anyways, I had a lot of conviction that a couple things. One was anything I learned in the tech world had told me that networks are valuable. Networks are valuable. Like all the investors basically made a ton of money. It made it usually investing in networks, and networks like Facebook, Twitter, Uber is a network of drivers. Networks like, it could be Twitch or YouTube, where it's a social network that's based around media. It's a media network of content and then viewers. And so I learned that networks are valuable. And what I saw was that even as the price was going up and down, the adoption of the network has just been on this steady rise. And the Ethereum network was bootstrapping even faster. The network was growing even faster in terms of number of users, number of active participants. And so I thought, if any startup had come and showed me this chart and had the TAM, the total market size of gold or of compute like Bitcoin and Ethereum, like I would put all my money into it. I would take a pretty massive risk. And so I tweeted out, I'm going to put 20, 25% of my net. I think I said, I don't know what I said, maybe 25% of my net worth into Bitcoin. And I tweeted that out. And I only got 20% of it in, and the price was going up like, by the next week, the price had already gone up. So I was hitting limits in Coinbase and stuff, trying to get money in. And by the time I got 20% in, it was already 30% of my net worth, and it's only gone up from there. So now I'm over 50% allocated into various cryptocurrencies, and again, like it's quite a risk, but I'm willing to be wrong. It's something that I have high conviction in, and I'm not willing to be right but not have my skin in the game. And that's kind of the calculus I did.
I love that. I've had a very similar experience. And, in the 2017, 18, 19, I would rebalance, right? Because I've been around a long time. I believe in the stock market and having a diverse portfolio. On the last run, I had a similar experience. It just kept going up. The percentage kept growing, and I just never rebalanced.
Right. Yeah. Now you take a sort of diversification is for losers approach, which is, if you're trying to aggressively, build wealth, you want to have a few concentrated positions as well. At least that's my point of view for myself. It's my advice to myself. And so, I have, a fund that invests in startups. Great. That exists. I have stocks, and then I have crypto. And I think that the way I've split it now, I think is right for my level of risk tolerance.
Right. Well, I love to say, don't put all your eggs in one basket, but I think Buffett said, or one of them said, put all your eggs in one basket and watch it very closely. Right.
Exactly.
And when I had Mark Yusko, another kind of famous hedge fund investor, on the show, he said, listen, you get rich from concentration. Diversification is for rich people who want to protect the money that they already made by being concentrated.
Exactly. And so, and it also depends how much money you're earning and what faith you have in your ability to earn more and withstand swings. So can I survive a winter swing where this goes down 80%? Yeah, like I'm just gonna hang on tight. I don't need that money, so I won't have to liquidate my position. Great. So that lets me play a long-term game. And if I said, okay, cool, if I wasn't allowed to look at the scoreboard, until 2030, would I feel comfortable with this position? Yeah, I'd actually probably do better if I can only look at the scoreboard in the year 2030.
Well, it's funny. I always joke that it's like if someone could look at a chart of the value of their house, they would go insane looking at what it was worth every single day and not just thinking about what it's going to be worth when it's time to sell it.
Yeah, that's actually funny. You should do that. You should put out a chart of a home, the median home, in San Francisco or whatever, and be like, what kind of volatile asset is this? Right? This thing swung, like crazy. And people put 80% of their net worth into their home. And it provides.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the stress of seeing your home go down 20% when that number is literally irrelevant at that moment because you had no intention of selling in the first place.
Exactly.
So I know that you pride yourself, I've read, on the ability to go from 0 to 1. I love that concept. I would love for you to share exactly what that means to you.
Yeah, so basically I think it's good to know yourself. And this is sort of like generic. Here's the generic career advice section. But there are a lot of people that I've met, and you meet them mostly in big companies, which are good at doing the 1 to N phase. So 0 to 1 is when you take something that's nothing and you make it something. The N is when you take something and you refine that something and you make it, something polished, and you make it something that scales well. You make it something efficient. And so you got to, in the business world, this is startups go from 0 to 1. You take an idea and you turn it into something, and if it's something, if it's actually, generating revenues and profits and it's sustainable and it's going to continue to live on, customers, it's growing and that sort of thing. And then as, a company matures, it needs people that are the people who are good at taking things from 1 to N. And so the other analogy that is, there are pioneers. The pioneers like to go find new land. That there are settlers. The settlers are good at taking that new land and saying, let's set up camp and let's get some systems in place, some basic imperfect systems in place. And then there's town planners, and town planners are the ones who connect all the settlements. They're the ones who can like run multiple divisions in a company. They can think many years ahead. They can operate at a pace that says, if 20% in a year is good growth, whereas a pioneer says 20% in a year, that's death. So you want to know which one are you? And so I've learned over time, I'm a better pioneer than I am a settler or a town planner. And I'm better at going from 0 to 1. I'm good at that initial phase. So why am I good? I'm good at it because I got reps at it. I got reps at it because I like to do it. And so how did that happen? Well, I ran an idea lab for 6 years. An idea lab was basically this guy who's a billionaire was funding this thing and said, you guys have a blank check to launch new companies. You have 20 engineers in house. You don't need any resources besides what's in this building. Here's the money and here's the engineering talent. Here's the designers. Go build things. And so we would just dream up an idea and we would build it. We would launch it. We would see if it worked. If it didn't work, we'd kill it. If it worked, we kept going with it. And so that's how I got good. Doing that for 6 straight years with 4 products at any given time was a way to get 20 years of experience, in a handful of years. And so I got good at launching things from 0 to 1. I also got good at learning things from 0 to 1. So in this crypto week, for example, I knew how to structure it. I knew how much time to spend reading shit versus doing shit. I knew how to like set goals of like what a day's goal would be and what the week's goals would be. And so I knew how to like organize something like that. So I could go 0 to 1 on, let's say DeFi, where I'd only kind of just known about it, but never really gone in and staked anything or earned yield or lended or borrowed or taken out a self-paying loan or whatever. I had never done any of those things, but I knew how to go from 0 to 1 in any topic quite quickly.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I think we can all agree that crypto's gotten past 1, yes, right, as an ecosystem. So let's put it on a scale. 1 being, I don't know, The Legend of Bagger Vance, one of the worst movies of all time, and N being Gladiator or Braveheart, some of the greatest movies of all time. Where would you put crypto on that scale?
Yeah, I think it's like a 3. I think the way I was thinking about this is like the end goal with like when Satoshi released the white paper, right? The white paper said this is a peer-to-peer payment system. And now there's 2 ways you can interpret that. One is what he invented is awesome, but it didn't achieve that vision, right? Like most of us Bitcoin bulls are not using Bitcoin for payments. It's not the actual use case. The other, the critics would say this is supposed to be a payment system. It is horrible as a payment system. It is slow. It is expensive. It is volatile. The prices are denominated in BTC. Look, the believers are just holding on. They're not trying to. They're using it as payments. So the critics would point at the same evidence and say, look, it has failed at its vision. And I think there's actually like a third point of view. And the third point of view is it's all going according to plan. And so what does that mean? What is the all going according to plan? Well, let's break it up into phases. So Bitcoin in the kind of like Bitcoin is what I would call an inevitability of the world. My holdco is called Inevitable Outcomes because I try to invest in and I try to think about what are the inevitable outcomes. So here's like an example. Self-driving cars. We will inevitably have self-driving cars. And when we do, it is going to be 100 times better than the current car experience. It's part of why it's inevitable because the prize is very valuable and it's just going to be a matter of time till the technology gets worked out. And so, once you can get into a car, go to sleep or eat food or watch a movie, get to your destination with, 99.99999% safety, you'll never go back to holding the wheel, staring at the road, inching through traffic and hoping you're not one of the 4 million people a year that are injured in car crash, in the US. And so once you get there, it's inevitable and you'll never want to go back. It passes the reverse test. Would I ever go back to that? No. So similarly for something like Bitcoin, just take like international remittance. If I want to go and send money to El Salvador, today I can go to Western Union. I'll go to a branch. Most likely that's how it worked. Now they have an app, but that's how it worked for a long time. You go to a branch, you take your cash, you hand it over. Then you hand the guy $25 of extra cash just for the fee of doing this. So I'm handing them, somewhere between 12 and 30% of my transaction fee of my transaction is just fees. So I lose that money I'm sending back home to El Salvador, let's say. And then on the other side, my family member there would have to go to a branch, get the money, walk out, hope they're not getting robbed right outside the branch, because that's what happens. A bunch of mobsters basically hang out outside of Western Unions, and they take your money, and then you go on your way. And so, the inevitable outcome is I open up my phone, I don't have to wait 3 to 5 days. I send you money with no fee, or like sort of an absolute, micro fee, and you get it on your phone in your home country safely, right? So like that's the inevitable outcome that's going to happen. And so the question is like, why are we not there yet? Well, there's a whole bunch of like infrastructure and also belief that has to get built up over time in order for that to exist. So most inevitable outcomes, you can imagine them, but they have to solve the chicken and egg problem. What's the chicken and egg problem, right? For Uber was a much better experience than taxis, but at first you needed a bunch of drivers with the Uber app installed, driving around ready to pick you up. And why would they do that if there weren't riders constantly requesting rides where they're able to earn money? So how does Uber solve the chicken and egg problem? Well, what Uber did was they raised a bunch of venture capital. They started within a city, and they would basically like subsidize this adoption. They would spend a bunch of money on drivers, a bunch of money on riders, and they would make the rides really cheap, cheaper than taxis, and they would make the drivers earn more than they did at taxis. And they used venture capital money to bootstrap the network to solve the chicken and egg problem. So how did Bitcoin do it when there's no company, there's no CEO, there's no marketing department, there's no ad spend? So how the heck is Bitcoin going to solve the chicken and egg problem of this isn't money until everybody thinks it's money, right? I'm not going to use this as money until everybody's using this as money. Well, it's had different use cases over time. So in the 2010s, it was like basically just like cryptographic nerds in the cryptography forums and anarchists who were like, F the government. They were buying this thing, for the cryptography guys bought it because it's a tech gadget basically. So then they could just mine it or buy it for dirt cheap. It's like, it's just a little tech toy for them in their garage. And then the anarchists bought it as a middle finger to the financial system, right? They hated fiat currency before, while most people thought fiat was a car. And so that was like phase one. Then comes phase two, right? Phase two is the Silk Road era, which was, we're going to buy this not to use it for payments peer-to-peer, but we're going to use this to buy illicit goods. So, okay, cool. That was a functional utility. And, I tip my hat to the noble service of the Silk Road and what they did to further Bitcoin adoption. It got it to the next bridge. The next bridge was tech investors basically who identified this and said, this is a good investment. 2014, 2015, you saw Andreessen, you saw Chamath, you saw a bunch of other people saying, this is amazing. I think at one point, Chamath and his funds owned 5% of all the Bitcoin. Draper was in there. Like a bunch of the tech VCs started putting in millions of dollars buying this thing as a long-term tech investment. Then came the next era, 2017, which was financial speculators. So now you get the finance bros coming in and they're buying it as a short-term flip. So that none of the people so far have been trying to use it as peer-to-peer payments, replacing it as money, but they've all found a different use case for why this is valuable. Whether I'm just giving a middle finger to the system, I'm buying it as a tech gadget, I'm buying it for drugs, I'm buying it as a long-term tech hold, or I'm doing it as a short-term flip. So far this speculation and sort of like the speculation and investment phase is causing the network to get bootstrapped, where every year more and more wallets get created and more people start to believe that this digital thing that was made out of thin air has value. It's just as valuable as these paper dollars or this gold. And so now you're kind of in the next phase where, like we talked about, games, art, these are bringing in more people, more users onto the network. And again, we're not using it as the way we transfer money between each other. We're using it to buy these digital assets. Okay, great. And so this is just going to continue on until enough people have the thing and enough people believe, when a few 100 million people have the thing, right now is maybe in the tens of millions, 10 to 20 million, I would say. When 100 to 200 million people have it and those 100 to 200 million people believe that this is valuable, now we don't need to transfer Bitcoin and ETH and convert it into dollars. We'll just leave it as Bitcoin or ETH, and then we'll just keep transferring it as a medium of exchange amongst ourselves. Right. And once we do that, it will have gone from store of value to medium of exchange. And then finally, it'll become a unit of account where you'll just read the price as, this much ETH or this much Bitcoin, and the volatility will have gone way down. The returns will have gone way down. And now it'll be a useful utility for a medium of exchange.
Listen, something's only true if enough people believe it, right? I mean, it's almost everything in our world is a shared belief system that gives it any credence or credibility.
Yeah. And, I heard this early on and it's only felt more true over time, which is money is the bubble that never pops. And so, yes, it's sort of like your mind has to hold two thoughts in it at the same time. wow, this Bitcoin thing is only has value if everybody convinces each other that this thing has value. That sounds like vapor. That sounds not so strong. And then you realize all money's that way. But then the second thing is that, well, the more people who do that, there is no needle to pop this bubble, right? Because there's no cash flows. There's no waiting for the shoe to drop. There's nothing that will. The more people who believe it, the more it actually comes true. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so this is one of these amazing things where the more people who believe it, the more it becomes true, the more valuable it becomes. And the early believers, the earlier you are, the more highly rewarded you are for spreading the gospel about this thing. And so it has the best elements of religion, it has the best elements of incentives, and has the best elements of technology all wrapped up into one. And so that's why it's, the brain virus that's, taken over mine and yours and many other people's brains.
Sure. Moral of the story, everyone, is you're still early enough and just buy some and wait.
Yeah.
That's all I got for you guys. So Shaan, where can everybody follow you, keep up with everything you're doing after this conversation?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter, Shaan VP. So SHAAN. It's a weird way to spell Shaan. SHAAN VP. That's my Twitter. And then just ShaanPuri.com if you want to get the newsletter where I talk about stuff like this. I go on little rants like this from time to time there. So if you like this, check those out. And if you listen to this as a podcast, you probably will like our podcast too. It's called My First Million. It's basically a brainstorm between me and my buddy who've both built and sold companies about, hey, if we had more time, these are ideas we would do because we think that they could work. So we basically investigated a bunch of ideas. We researched them, we diligence them, and then we just give them away for free because we don't have the time to go do all, I can't do too many businesses at once. I already got 4. So the 5th one goes out free on the podcast.
So everyone go listen, steal his ideas and build something out of it, please. Right?
Yes, exactly. We've had, I think now, at least 5 people who are self-made millionaires, stories that they've told us from taking an idea from the pod and doing it. And that's in 18 months or so. So that's kind of amazing. 5's not a big number, but that's kind of crazy at the same time.
It's a big number. Absolutely amazing. Well, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate your perspective. And I hope others are encouraged to go do their 1 or 2 week deep dive into the crypto space.
Yeah. And if you want to know how to do it, I'm going to put it out on my newsletter, exactly how I structured the week. So go to ShaanPuri.com and I'll keep that in there as like one of the kind of like the first emails you get as here's how I did my crypto week if you want to go do it too.
Amazing. Everybody check that out. Thank you, Shaan.
All right. Take care.